Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie Podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Hunter.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brian.
Yes?
Before we get too far into the show.
Okay.
Did you see this whole thing from E3 with Bethesda and the Skyrim Very Special Edition?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Of course, it's got Keegan-Michael Key in it. Yes.
Well, did you also know that that's real?
Yes, I did know it's real. I was very tempted.
I got it, and I played it for 15 minutes and got so lost. I was like, this is amazing, but like I could totally see this as a new like text adventure version of like an RPG, choose your own adventure thing. Like it was pretty cool.
Oh wow. Wait, so do you have an Echo, or did you use the app, or?
No, I've got an Echo. It's in our kitchen. So I told Amazon to go ahead and install the Skyrim Very Special Edition. And when I got home, I forgot about it for a second. I was telling my roommate, and I was like, we should go check this out. And so I started playing. I think I leveled up to like level 5 or something like that, and I increased some of my skills. Like it's a full on like adventure. It's actually pretty cool. I can see people going on like long like road trips or something like that because you can get the app for your phone and just like you know you've got like an hour commute to work. You just play a little Skyrim on the road.
Do you have to have an Echo to get the app, or is the app?
No, you can just have the app on your phone.
I'm gonna have to look that up because
the Alexa app.
Scott, did you see this? Did you see this this very special Skyrim video that we're talking about?
I did, in fact.
Okay. Folks, we have a guest this week joining us from Charlottetown in Prince Edward Island, Canada, Scott McCollum, the lead developer of the game we're talking about, Remnant.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
One last thing, I'm going to have to try the Skyrim thing. Folks, if you haven't seen it, basically Bethesda made fun of themselves by making a video with the amazing Keegan-Michael Key, with Skyrim on and Amazon Echo, totally voice activated, and it's the funniest. It's so funny.
Yeah, but joke was on us. They actually made it. Like I couldn't believe like when someone linked to the Amazon link, I was like, "Holy crap, it's real!"
It's great. Now I want to see if they're going to do it for the pagers and the smart refrigerators.
Well, someone on Reddit was talking about how like they have Alexa integration with their thermostat, and they're like, "Well, I guess I can play Skyrim on my thermostat." What a time to be alive, ladies and gentlemen.
Eventually, we're just going to have smartwatches with Skyrim on them. Going to be walking around Fusro Da into our wrist. But we're not here to talk about Skyrim, folks, even though if you haven't seen the very special Skyrim video from Bethesda from E3, you should look it up. It's freaking hilarious.
It is really good.
Yeah, I know. We're here to talk about Remnant, the very unique-looking 4X that is currently in its second Kickstarter. And congratulations, this much more modest second Kickstarter was successful within just a few days, maybe about a week, right?
It's actually, I think, less than 24 hours to hit the goal.
No,
very
that's
forever.
Now I gotta applaud you because it's rare to see a Kickstarter with such a modest goal. Your goal was just a few $100s, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, 750 Canadian, so whatever it translates to local currency.
I think it was about 400 something, 500 something American. But yeah, that is incredibly modest. And I gotta say, when you see a goal that's that low, it kind of instills, I don't know if anyone told you this, but to me, it's like, it instills kind of a confidence. Like, oh, I don't need a lot to finish this. So just help me get over that finish line.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just a little bit of 2D art that I really need.
Right, because let's go back a little bit. You did have a first Kickstarter. That was a couple of years ago. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Okay, 3 years ago. Yeah. There's so many Kickstarters I can't even keep track, I'll be honest with you. So you had a Kickstarter 3 years ago. I'll be honest, I did back that one. Just gonna say.
Well, thank you.
But that one sadly was not successful. But you've still been working on the game since then.
Yep. I'm too stubborn to quit on something I enjoy, so that's the reason.
And now you're back with the second Kickstarter with a much more modest goal, and you've already made, what, 3-4 times your
It's
goal?
actually higher than the old one got to, so I'm very happy.
No, it isn't.
It is.
No.
I'm very, very thankful for everyone that's supported.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's kind of hilarious, but also kind of wonderful. So, yay. Maybe the economy's better. Maybe because you asked for less people are like, hey, well, that's great. No, I did not. That's great. But let's talk about the game itself. Remnant is different. It's a 4X. But folks, before you start groaning, going, oh God, another one? Another Master of Orion clone?
No,
It is
exactly.
It is not. It is not. Why don't you give us the rundown of your game? Like, give us like the elevator pitch, bullet point thing of your game.
Sure. So it is definitely not a Master of Orion clone at all. I'm trying to be as different as possible in that regard. I feel like a lot of those games fail to really recapture Master of Orion because you get that feeling of I've already done this before. And so Remnant is really trying to engage you on a personal level where all of the colonies have meaning to you. It's not just 300 random worlds that you don't care about.
Right.
It's set in a single planetary system, so that there's only a handful of worlds to actually get to. So these worlds will all have meaning in the sense that you grow up with them, sort of, in the way that, Pluto, people get so passionate about Pluto. Is it a planet? Is it not a planet? I'm trying to have that sort of emotional connection with these worlds in a way that, a giant star galaxy with hundreds of stars, thousands of stars, you just can't do. So that's it. That's the main goal, is like a very emotionally connected, small scale, as in empire size game.
Yeah, I have to admit that's one thing I'm very intrigued by this game is a lot of these 4Xs are galactic in scale, multiple solar systems, multiple planets, per solar system, yada yada yada. And you're right, they do start feeling just like dots you build a farm on. But
Exactly.
Yeah, but you're not only gonna have a much zoomed in focus, which I think is fascinating. Like, it's not just one faction owns an entire planet. You can have multiple factions on a planet. Am I remembering that right?
That's 100% correct.
Right. So there are multiple factions, and you don't own the whole planet. You can only have like a continent or half a continent even. And
right, exactly.
So the space that is it sectors or is it?
Yeah, it's sectors are the regions around space that you colonize, or around a planet. Sorry, that you colonize.
Right, and they determine how much you can build on a planet plus how much you can have in orbit. Right.
Exactly.
Am I remembering that?
Right.
Okay.
It's a sector is basically, imagine there's a planet, and then around every planet there's a certain amount of sectors depending on its size. So like an asteroid might have 4 sectors around it, whereas Earth would have 8, 10, 12, and something like Jupiter could have 20. But you might not be able to colonize Jupiter in that sense, but you could still station ships in orbit around those points. So something like Earth with 10 sectors, let's say, opens the possibility for 10 potential colonies instead of whoever gets to Earth first wins, right? It's trying to avoid that semantic because of the smaller single planetary system scale. Whereas, like, I understand why in galactic scale 4X games, whoever gets that planet takes the whole planet, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense if you even look at Earth, right? Like a single 2,000 person colony ship landing on a barren Earth. You don't own the whole Earth just from landing one ship there.
You own Pennsylvania, basically. You own New York, basically. If that. So I actually kind of like that because it means you can have on one planet you can have multiple factions vying for the same space, and you can have factions battling it out for these sectors on individual planets. Right? Exactly. Is that right? Oh, wow. Yeah. Is there going to be ground combat, or is it just space combat?
It's just space combat. It's mainly for ease of gameplay because it's real time, so all of these combat sectors are happening all at the same time.
Oh, crap. Really?
Yeah, so if you get in a bad war and you've made too many enemies and you had to fight on 4 fronts simultaneously.
So how do you manage that as a player? Do you have like AI for your fleets? Can you give them like general orders and they'll just try to handle the battle as best they can? Do you have to individually do you pause and switch and go back and switch? Like how do you manage that?
Sure. So it's small in scale on purpose in all regards. So you're not managing like 200 ships individually per battle. It would be 4 to 6 maybe. They'll all fly and act independently without you, but you can obviously come in and queue up orders or deploy what I call tactical abilities. And so you'll want to focus on certain areas for sure. Like I've thrown 4 ships at this sector. There's only 1 defender, so I'll just ignore the sector and let the AI play out this for me. And focus on the one where it's 4 on 4, and like I need to deploy my abilities at the right time and give proper orders, sort of thing.
Is there going to be like a ticker or a picture-in-picture type thing where you can kind of monitor what's going on in other battles as you're in a different one?
You can jump between the sectors within a blink of an eye, no problem.
Oh, okay.
There's no picture-in-picture though. I haven't thought of that. Maybe I could come up with something like that, but that wasn't on the table as of right now.
So are there going to be like icons for each battle, and you can quickly switch between each one? Is that like something like that? Maybe. Like, is that what we're talking about? Okay, good.
There's the UI. I haven't shown a lot of the UI off because there's a lot of small assets that are missing. And so I don't really like showing off, let's say half of it looks complete and the other half looks like a complete mess. So, but basically the UI, sort of like Stellaris with the outliner thing on the right, it has that sort of feel where you can just look at a glance at what you need, click, and your camera will just go to that view instantaneously.
Yeah, there's definitely a few games that have that. That's a good mechanic to have.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite things about Stellaris.
So basically the UI in Remnant is that entirely. It takes up a slightly bigger portion of your screen, but your camera will pan over to share the view with the UI there, and you can open and close it as you see fit, but you just give all your commands in that little window right there.
Oh,
it's not so little. It takes up about a third of the screen, whereas Stellaris is like a fifth to a sixth.
You know what's interesting is like Stellaris I always thought did it very well in the sense that it organized things by like here's your planets, here's your fleets, here's your whatever. I always got frustrated with something like Sins of a Solar Empire, for example, like on the left-hand side, because it would like put everything in each system. So like, here's one system, and here is the list of all the ships you have in that system, and I'm just like, Jesus, this is overwhelming. But like, having it nice and just like compact, where it's just like click on what you want to see, and then we'll expand that. I like that approach.
That's exactly what I'm going for. It's broken down by areas of interest like that rather than here's everything, as you said.
Oh, that's good. Because, Sins of a Solar Empire's UI is great at first. You're like, wow, this is cool. Then you're like the mid-game, you're like, oh, kill me. Just kill me now.
I quite literally ignore the stuff on the left-hand side where it's got everything, because it's like, I'd rather just scroll out at a glance and see everything and try and like...
It's a mess.
It gets cumbersome, right, as the game goes on. I think that's true of a lot of 4X games. As you get further and further, you just you don't want to play because you're fighting the UI as much as you are your enemies.
Yeah.
Actually, can I delegate this to somebody?
Yeah.
That's one reason I love Distant Worlds, is because it lets you manage the UI as you see fit, but it also has AI to manage different things as well. So, At some point, I'm like, when did Distant Worlds get a better UI than Sins of a Solar Empire?
Right.
But I've never been frustrated in the mid game with Distant Worlds like I have been with Sins, where it's like, oh god, I'm just gonna scroll out and look at everything. That's the only way to do this properly.
Eventually, in Sins, you just stop caring. You just like box the whole planet and just send everything at the other planet, right? I don't care about these ships anymore. Get off my UI.
But that's something you're going to be trying to work against in Remnant. You're going to try and make, instead of ships just being cannon fodder, you want every ship to be an individual asset that actually like means something.
Exactly. That's really the whole overarching goal of everything in the game. I want everything to mean something to the player themselves, whether they build their own little story about it or it's like, this is just a very important resource because I put so much time into it, whether it's that emotional connection or like game connection, I guess, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, not a lot of games do that. Like, I think, did you ever play the Kohan games?
Which ones? No.
Kohan.
No, not familiar.
They're amazing real-time strategy games. They're fantasy, but you don't have individual units. You have like regiments that you build with other units. So each regiment is like your custom little creation. So you actually give a crap about like, oh, how's that one doing? How's that one doing? You know?
Right, whereas like a Total War, it's just hundreds of anonymous regiments, you mean?
Exactly. Or most 4X games where it's like, oh, this fleet has just whatever ships. Who cares? Oh, they have an admiral.
Right.
Like, oh, they throw in an admiral to try to make you care. But it's like, an admiral is just like, oh, plus 2 to weapons. In most of these games.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. Especially when like the names are like Beam Cruiser 342, right?
Oh,
like that's
God,
its default name when it comes out of the factory.
Yeah, because like, no, these ships should have crews and captains and like individualities. You know, like in Star Trek, for example.
Exactly. I want you controlling the Enterprise, not, random USS nothing.
Yeah, like the Hood 12. Or the Defiant 18. Yeah, you want to like avoid that kind of.
That's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. Because it's so unengaging as a player, to me at least, to play games like that where you're just throwing these ships away. And I get the sense of like on a galactic scale, the Emperor wouldn't really care. But then they always flip it. It's like, why am I planning these food farms and mines individually, right? It's like I'm focused on the wrong scope here. I shouldn't be managing the city and ignoring my thousands of ships. It should be the other way around. It should be delegating the city development to someone and managing my massive fleet of death machines, right? Like that's what I feel the Space Emperor would do.
Yeah, like there are a couple of games that try to be more Space Emperor-y, and they don't give you all this control over your fleets or your colonies or whatever. And that's, I think, the right way to do it. Like, if I'm an emperor, why am I planting a farm? Why am I why am I designing a ship? I'm an emperor. I'm not an admiral. I'm not a.
You delegate those tasks to people that are competent at them, while you rule with an iron fist. That's the whole point of being the emperor.
Right. So in this game, you're not an emperor. You're a faction leader. And
right. Yeah.
So you have that kind of personal connection with the people in your faction. It sounds like.
Exactly. So basically, there are no resources in the traditional sense of like food or space crystals, right? Whatever invented thing.
Space crystals, yeah.
Well, right, like they always have that one magic resource,
dilithium
drive and stuff. Yeah,
unobtainium,
exactly.
Whatever. Yeah,
exactly. So those resources don't exist, at least in the point where it's exposed to the player. You don't care that you have 3,942 food this turn. So everything is done through agents and colony programs. And agents are workers, subordinates to you, They all have like a unique face, a unique name, and they all have RPG like stats, like, you know, leadership or science or things like that decide how good they are. And your colonies develop through programs which you, as the leader, emperor, whatever you're role playing as, basically delegate a task for this colony to complete, such as research, that's an important program, or building a new ship, or quelling a uprising on the colony, developing, you know, financial infrastructure, things like that, so that you still make these decisions like you're building, sort of, but it doesn't feel like farm number 32, right?
Right. Like, oh, I have to build another farm or another lab or another factory.
Exactly. Yeah. So the goal is to give these colonies sort of identities to you, right? Like in I use the Star Wars example all the time, where it's like Endor has a unique feel to it compared to Tatooine, which has a unique feel to it, right? It's not just another forest world or another desert world. You know, Tatooine's a corrupt, scummy place run by gangsters, and Endor's that little hidden outpost that the Empire doesn't want people to find. And so I'm trying to give identities to colonies in that sort of way by making the programs decide how the colony develops and what like inner workings come about from those programs. And it might not be presented to the player like, here's plus 10 food per turn, but like people can starve if you just ignore your agriculture industry, or you don't start a food rationing program or something like that. And the results of those programs is directly related to the agents that run them. So if you put a really bad science person on the lead new technology you're trying to unlock, they will just take forever and cost you a fortune compared to someone more competent. And so when you have these really well-developed, leveled up agents, losing them is just heartbreaking to your empire and to you as the player. It's not just like this person who means nothing to me died. It's this person I've played the game with for 4 hours and has been my chief researcher and unlocked all these technologies for me, was just assassinated, right? And now I want to go after the empire or faction that killed them. So I there's that personal connection, emotional connection. You feel something to your empire rather than everything's just anonymous.
So is there like espionage in the way like you can have one of your top scientists be assassinated? Like, is that kind
absolutely
of...
absolutely?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Everything is tied into those agents, and so they can be killed, they can die in battle, they can be kidnapped and then like bargained with in diplomacy, they can just be straight out assassinated. And they actually have like reputations amongst the factions themselves. So if you say send a certain person as a diplomat over and over and over again, that person sort of builds a rapport with the other faction you're bargaining with, and which might, you know, come in handy later in other negotiations, or might make that person a target for a third faction who is sick of, you know, Joe being so good, so close to his enemies, right?
Right. Oh, so
yes, sorry. Oh. Yes, there is espionage. You can send agents on all sorts of missions, like kidnapping, assassinating, just regular spying, regular sabotage to like slow down the other person's programs, reconnaissance, you know, trying to wheel and deal and buy secrets to see where they might have colonies set up on little hidden sectors you don't quite know about. Things like that. So espionage was huge. It was one of the cornerstones of the game that I needed to have in. Because I feel like a lot of 4X games just kind of paint it on at the end and hope for the best.
I know. Oh my God, I know. I was going to say, so many games don't get espionage right. It's, oh, you stole a blueprint from this empire. It's like, But with you making the game so personal, you open up all these avenues of espionage, from blackmail to kidnapping to sabotage to all kinds of great stuff.
And because those agents are like developed and experienced over the course of the game, kidnapping or assassinating a high-level enemy agent, sets back their whole research program or their whole factory construction or spaceship construction, right? Because that person was leading those programs, and because of their stats or the attributes, RPG-like attributes, they're no longer as efficient at running those programs because they literally don't have the person to do it anymore. They put all of their time and energy into developing, Joe Smith to do it.
I'm loving this more and more. So another thing that a lot of 4X games don't get right, but with the personal aspect of this one, I'm kind of intrigued, is politics, diplomacy. With so many 4X games, it's like, I'd like to make a trade agreement. All right. I'm going to declare war on you. All right. But like, it sounds like with a game like this, you open up quite a bit more in the way of options for diplomacy when you have personal agents, diplomats, that sort of thing.
Right. So, exactly. The diplomacy and relations works at both the empire and agent level.
Oh,
so,
wow.
like, obviously, yeah, if you declare war on someone and, like, bomb their colonies, they're going to hate you, right? Just you in general, not one specific person. But if, like, say, Jean-Luc Picard, you send out to attack this person over and over and over again, and he's raiding their ships or whatever, and that person's the Borg will come and hunt down specifically Jean-Luc Picard.
Oh, that's
not
great.
Necessarily just your empire. And,
oh my God.
The idea is to have like some banter in there, right? Some game events and messages where it's like they're coming for him to help build this little story of this little micro story, right, of Jean-Luc Picard in this situation. But you can just piss people off, right? If you raid with Jean-Luc Picard, you don't want to then send Jean-Luc Picard as the diplomat, right? Like, that's just going to end poorly.
But it also sounds like it opens the possibility of things like bounty hunting and whatnot. Like,
yeah, they will definitely target specific agents, right? If they wrong them. And they might then specifically capture them instead of kill them so that they can use it against you, right? Well, you raided with this guy, now we have him. What are you going to give us for him?
Now, let me ask you this, because I don't think any 4X game has done this. Can you have defections? Like,
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can both, as an espionage option, try to recruit someone to get them to defect as you. Your enemy can do that too. But also game events might trigger an agent to defect if like a combat goes horrendously wrong and you lose an entire fleet that you shouldn't lose. An admiral might leave and go join the enemy because clearly you're incompetent for letting that happen. And because that person has been leveled up and developed, that's a huge blow to your empire. And likewise, if you get someone, right, you screw over the other person, and now you have this really well-developed, competent agent to put to work.
That I'm kind of all aflutter because, I can only think of a few games. Like, maybe, did you ever play Seven Kingdoms?
I did not, no.
Well, that game has amazing espionage. Like, I once had a spy recruited into an enemy's army, and then they got promoted to general, and then they eventually got promoted. Then they eventually got promoted to king, and I was able to just take over that empire just by switching them.
Right.
But then you have a game like. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
But then you have a game like Star Wars Rebellion, in which you have characters.
My favorite 4X game of all time.
Oh, I am.
It's up there
for me too. Oh no, it's up there for me too. It's really quirky, and trying to play it on a modern display is not the easiest thing because it
hurts your eyes really bad.
It's so locked in that 640 by 480. It's like, oh god. But like back in the day, even like kind of today, there's no other game that really, like, the closest might be Crusader Kings, that does what it did, and
Yeah,
you got to do all these amazing. Oh my god, yeah. Sorry.
Rebellion was a huge influence on me as a gamer and a player, and I just feel like the stories you get out of Rebellion compared to any other 4X game is night and day, right? Like, you're sending Han Solo to do something, and he gets captured, and now you need to send Luke to rescue him, right? And Luke has his own little journey where he has to run away to Dagobah and hang out with Yoda for a bit. So you lose him as a competent leader before he comes back better than ever. It's just, there's such little micro stories woven throughout the game as you play that you personally build, in that sense of like, I've sent Han to do this, I got Han captured, not so much, random agent, random espionage number 32 guy failed, right? I don't care.
Yeah, it's a real shame we're probably never going to get any kind of modern remake of that game, because I think the only way to play it properly is probably on a 640 by 480 CRT.
Yeah, probably. It really hurts your eyes if you try to play now. I've done it a couple of times.
And like, if you're on Windows 8 or 10, it's like reversed or something. Like, I tried to play multiplayer with our co-host Jim, and like he couldn't play it because it was flipped. It's like some old games just don't do well with more modern systems, and that sadly is one of them. Because I would love to be able to tell people you need to play Rebellion, but like, if you didn't play it back then, you're probably not going to be able to get into it now, which is just a damn shame.
It's a shame. I agree.
Such a shame.
Agree.
Oh my god.
One of my favorites.
Oh, but it sounds like you're really trying to make not a Star Wars successor, but like your own kind of successor.
Yeah, it definitely influenced me, the way you played that game through agents, basically through the hero characters.
The characters, yeah, that's right.
So that's exactly what I want. Except instead of Han Solo, you get someone randomly generated, but then for the rest of your game, this person is Han Solo to you in that regard, that you've personally developed them as like a shady smuggler or what have you.
So since you don't have the Star Wars lore to draw on, what is the backstory for your game?
So basically, there's no FTL in faster than light travel. So if we were to colonize another star now, today, us, right, we'd basically be just sending them, and then good luck, right? We would never hear from them ever again, most likely. If they were 10 light years away, right? That's a 20-year round trip just to say hello. So he basically just abandoned them. And that's basically the premise of Remnant, is that a non-FTL society has sent a ship out to colonize, and then so many generations later, after they've set up their initial colonies, right, they'll just sort of branch out naturally, and then things will just splinter from there. So that's the premise for Remnant.
It's kind of a shame that a lot more games don't incorporate this lack of FTL into their gameplay, because like, it could make, you don't have to have the whole universe to have engaging stories. Like Firefly did it, The Expanse does it, where you don't have FTL, but you still have this multi-layered world, and it's kind of a shame there are more games that do that. I think they're all like,
I like hard sci-fi. Like, Remnant's not like super strict hard sci-fi, but I like lack of FTL sort of sci-fi. It tells more intimate stories, and it avoids a lot of the instantaneous magical appearance of rescue, right, and stuff like that.
Right, like that's one of the things that makes things like Firefly and The Expanse so engaging. It's like, there's no magic warp drive or jump drive that'll get you there to be the big hero. You gotta wait.
Right, exactly.
You need time to get to where you're going to do what you need to do. And there's going to be a delay in communications.
And that plays into a lot of the gameplay of Remnant, because if you take a colony on the, let's say Pluto, right, on to use our solar system as an example, if you were to colonize Pluto to come rescue people on Earth, the Earth is dead by the time you could possibly make it there. So it's the same sort of thing. You need to really be strategic on where you put your colonies. Things are moving, right? Compared to, I think, most 4X games, even most space 4X games, the map is very static in that regard. But here, everything's moving, orbiting, right? Following all of Kepler's laws of motion. So what might be, a 10-minute trip in game time an hour ago now will take you 45 minutes because you're on the other side of the system after so much orbit time.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So you need to tactically plan where these colonies are going, when they'll be in alignment, when they won't be in alignment. But you can use that strategically, right? The planet, let's say Mars and Earth, are going to align in the next 20 minutes. Then game time, 20 minutes, I mean. Let me build a small attack force because I know I'll be able to surprise Earth by attacking from Mars when these planets are fairly close to each other. Whereas an hour from now, game time again, they'll be on the opposite ends, and no surprise would be possible because it would take so long to travel.
Right, but you're not, I mean, for planets and stuff, you're adhering to a more realistic hard sci-fi, but it doesn't sound like you're doing that for like spaceship movement and combat and stuff like that. Because
no, it's all like it's a little bit fancy. You'll get about 1G acceleration traveling through the system, but like the game time itself is sped up, so it's not like you wouldn't take days and days of real life time to get across the system.
Right, but you're also not, like I'm saying, you're also not calculating orbital paths and whatnot.
Oh no. There's some space magic for just floating in orbit and stuff like that. You just shoot a straight line for the most part. You're not like doing gravity slingshots and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've played Children of a Dead Earth.
I have not, but I've heard very good things about it.
It's amazing, and that's exactly what you do. You do slingshots and plot courses, and it's like full realistic space combat, and I loved it, and I was terrible at it. So you got to have a little bit of, like you said, magic to
there's a little space
to make
magic
it playable. Yeah,
there's so many sectors for you to worry about at the same time. It would just be too much. Whereas I feel like if it was just statically focused on one battle, that would work, the orbital mechanics. But because I want like multiple fronts at the same time, I went a little space magic there in that regard.
That's totally fair. You got to keep it playable,
Yeah, exactly. That trumps everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So your game is totally in real time, but you're able to. I'm hoping you're able to pause it. Please, you're right. You're able to,
right now you are not, but I might cave to pressure on that. I'm a big StarCraft player, so I'm very comfortable making real-time decisions, but I know a lot of people aren't. So there might be pause for sure added, but probably not time controls like half speed, 2 times speed, because I want to capture that feeling of you have to make a decision on where you go and what you focus on, rather than you can just do everything all at once. But I know a lot of people don't like that high, I don't want to say too high APM, actions per minute.
That can cause anxiety and stress.
Right, I know, but that's the point a bit, right? In that you are reacting to these situations. These are personal people. You have to pick, does John die or does Bill die, because you can only be in one sector at a time.
Maybe you make it like a thing that you choose at the beginning of the game, like this is going to be a fully real-time game, or this is going to be a pausable game, and that's when you have that option, and that's it.
That's probably a good happy medium.
Yeah, that way if someone wants to pause, they can do it, but if they don't and they want that pressure, they can have that too.
They can't get out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
You made your choice, live with it.
Exactly, and they might find they prefer to have a pause, and then they have that option, or they might learn that they prefer the, or they might. I think it's good to give the player a choice. So, I think that's probably.
No, I agree. I agree that highly customizable experiences are much more enjoyable than non-highly customizable experiences.
Yeah, exactly. So what kind of factions are we looking at for this game? Do we have like the sciencey, like a lot of 4X games, you have the warlike guys and the sciencey guys and the tradey guys and the like, are you going to have more shades of gray? Like how Tell me about the factions.
That part's still a bit up in the air. I haven't really locked down final designs for that stuff. I agree that the merchant guys and the war guys and the whatever else guys is a little cliche, so I would like to avoid that a bit. But at the same time, it's a bit of a trope that people enjoy, because then when they play the war faction, they get in that mindset of, I want to be the conqueror, versus when they play the merchant, they want to be the economist, right? So I like that trope and I don't like that trope, and I'm a bit wishy-washy on that. So I'm not 100% set on factions just yet.
Like, are there going to be role-playing elements to the fact? Like you said, there are role-playing elements to the agents. They're going to be role-playing elements to the overall factions as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
good.
The colony programs you can run will change depending on your faction, right? If you're like a super slave trading people, right, you're not going to be running let's all be friends to each other kind of programs, that sort of thing. Whereas like warmongers would have more militaristic, right, like forced conscription or something like that would be a colony program. Maybe slavers would have, right, like get to work and build this ship really, really fast, or we'll come down to the colony and make sure you do, sort of thing. So there will definitely be that aspect to it.
Now, are there going to be like illegal activities that you can engage in, like slavery, piracy, contraband smuggling, that sort of thing? Are there going to be things you can engage with with certain characters, perhaps, or as
I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, because as the leader, right, are you really violating your own regulations?
True.
Right. It's not like an RPG in that sense, where like this individual character will do something illegal out of context for what the faction would want, right? You're still delegating the task to them.
Right, okay. But there's not going to be like any kind of overarching galactic system law thing either. It's basically going to be
it's too small scale for that. There's no like galactic UN established, right? Like you're just now reaching out into space after settling down. So there's no unified code of conduct or anything like that. Just whatever your own personal faction believes in at this point, after so many generations isolated from everyone else.
That's fair. And are there going to be varied victory conditions? Like you have the most sectors, you have the best technology, you have the biggest fleet. I don't know, that kind of thing, or
right.
Like, so what are some of the victory conditions?
I really don't like arbitrary victory conditions where the game just ends. I think there's nothing more gutting when like you're playing a game, you're really into it, and then it's like some faction you've never dealt with has reached 307 economy points, you lose, right? Like I find those kind of conditions abhorrent. I think that at its core, Remnant is a very war-based game. And so it'll be generally like domination and elimination and conquest related victory conditions.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. That's kind of how things go anyway.
well, the thing is, like, the problem with a lot of those conditions is to beat like the economy-based victory condition, you have to fight anyways. That's the only way to counter it, because the system is so self-contained in a way that like you can't really influence another empire's economy generally to reduce their ability to reach that victory. So you have to go to war and fight them anyways. So what's the point of having this economy victory if the only way to beat it is through fighting anyways? So that's sort of my rationale between this, right? Because if there was a way to interfere with their economy, and there is in Remnant to a degree, but you can't really get in there and, cause so much chaos that they lose all of their economy points, right? That's just not fun to play against, right? If someone could just kill your entire economy in the click of a button.
Right.
So if the only way to counter it is through war, what's the point of making war not the primary victory condition.
That's fair. But can you do things to affect their economy? Like, say they have a convoy of things going from one of their colonies to another one. Can you take down that convoy? That sort of thing.
The private sector is not really up for play as far as like existing in the world in that regard. Like, you can't ambush a convoy, as you're saying, but you can absolutely send agents on, sabotage mission programs, or clandestine operations to disrupt the internal workings. But you can't just lay a trap right in the sector and then their whole private economy goes to hell.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because
so basically the only thing that exists in the like 3D world are ships and like weapons platforms and things like that.
Right. And you can build orbital platforms and space stations for added defense and whatnot, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you will be able to. Right. Still waiting on some 3D models for that, though.
So there is an interesting part of this video that just passed as we're talking. It'll probably be a little bit delayed on the stream, where part of a ship got blown out and a person was flung out.
Oh, yeah. That's just part of a fun little cinematic. That kind of detail is not actually rendered. Plus,
I was gonna say, wow, that is a fun little cinematic.
That was just a little like narrative cinematic.
Yeah, because when you see all that happen in like the first new Star Trek movie, you're like, oh shit.
Right? Yeah.
Like, oh no, that's awful. That is so super awful. So what engine, which engine are you using for this game? Or is it your own custom job?
It's Unity.
Oh, that's fair.
I know I might catch some flack. Unity seems to have a bit of a tarnished reputation, but I'm definitely confident in it.
I think Unity has a tarnished reputation, not because of people who make legitimate games from it, but because of all these asset flips that people make and then put on the store for 99 cents, and it's got trading cards and 1,000 achievements, and so I mean, Unity is great because like that and Unreal Tournament, it's giving all these people like yourself access to tools they didn't have 10, 20 years ago.
No, absolutely.
So I have nothing but love for Unity, but I get why some people are like, Unity. It's because there's a lot of garbage made on Unity, but your game clearly isn't.
Absolutely.
Your game clearly isn't garbage.
Thank you.
Based on what I've seen so far. Now, how far along is the thing? Like, is it pre-alpha? Is it alpha? Like, where are you right now in this thing?
It's hard to specifically say, as far as like a title like that goes, but it's definitely there. Some of the systems don't play nice together, and that's mainly on me. And a lot of the art assets are not finalized. And so basically the next month, 2 months, it's going to be a lot of polish and bringing things together. And it should, I'm terrible at picking deadlines for myself, but I'm very confident that it should be ready to go by September.
Really?
As far as like an early access, I'm planning an early access release. I know. But I really feel like it's a good way to get people that are interested in the game playing it, and then finding the bugs and hammering those out while I continue to add more content, more ship models, more weapon platforms, things like that. Because it's very easy to add things like colony programs, for example, because behind the scenes they're just little packets of data, whereas in another game, a whole 3D animated rigged character and a full 3D level would be months of work, whereas like I could just hammer out more and more programs and more game events to keep the game interesting as it sits in early access. I know that people have their gripes about it, and I agree. I've been screwed. I bought DayZ super early in early access, so I know all about their struggles. But that for every bad seed, there's the guys that are really passionate and doing their best to really bring it to life. And I like to think I'm that kind of person.
Well, we had a show recently on early access, and it sounds like you're doing it the right way, based on what we've seen of successful early access programs. Like, because a lot of early access programs are like pre-order, like this is how we're going to fund game development, and that doesn't work very well most of the time.
No, you don't want to do it like that. I agree.
But the way you're doing it with getting feedback, and getting it in the hands of people to test it, and for people who want to test it, knowing going in that this is an early access version, that we want feedback. That sounds like a way better, way healthier way to do it.
And it's not just like the technical issues. It's like there are, I don't want to sound too unhumble here, but it really is a little bit different compared to other games. And so you need to fine tune those things. And though I may be in love with the way the system plays out now, maybe it's too clunky or unintuitive for players who aren't used to building, 20 farms, and this is new and foreign, and I haven't presented it in the right way yet. That sort of thing. I think there's a lot of gameplay related quirks that need to be ironed out.
Sure, and getting actual real playtesters in there is very helpful.
Exactly. While I build and expand the content, right? Versus just leaving it there and let them be the beta testers. That is not my goal at all.
Right, especially since, as you say, a lot of the game is done. You're just using the Kickstarter for like some art touch-up and whatnot. Again, instills...
There's a lot of polish, basically.
Right, it instills a level of confidence that you might not otherwise have with an early access title. So, yeah, early access does have its detractors, but I think it can cause more problems than it can solve more problems than it causes if done right.
Exactly. That's what I agree with you. And if you think the game's going to be abandoned, it's not, because I have a track record already of slaving away at the game when it wasn't funded. But also, just don't buy into it in early access, right? Like, I fully appreciate that point of view that it could be abandoned, so I'm not going to touch it. And I'm happy that you're not, I would never want someone to give up on their principles or their feelings on something in that regard. So if you don't dig early access, don't come get it. Yeah, right. Wait for the full release, which I promise will come out, but wait and see if that's your point of view.
Yeah, that's a really fair way to go about it. I think if you're clear and you're communicative with the people who help you during early access, then,
exactly. So many developers, I feel, just go silent, right? Like,
oh my god, I know.
Wait 3 months to give every update, whereas because I feel like the vast majority of content that's missing is mostly, like I said, data versus actual physical assets. By the time I release on early access, that the content updates will come super fast, right? Adding programs and adding game events are things you can just do as you go versus being on some deadline for so many textures or whatever from an artist, which takes forever. There's things I can do, I'm in control of, so I'll be able to develop, right? Versus waiting for a third party or a contracted artist or things like that. So those are the problems I'm trying to solve now with the Kickstarter to get the art done, right? And then the more programs and more game events will follow. That's not to say there's not already a lot in there. Don't mistake me. I just want to have hundreds and hundreds of possible game events like a Paradox game would have, right?
Yeah. Say what you want about a Paradox game. They do not skimp when it comes to things that can happen in their games.
Exactly. But that takes a lot of time to write those little things, right? So it's not the most pressing issue, but obviously it's important, but it's not game breaking to not have thousands of them at launch, right?
Right. Sorry, I'm responding to someone in chat, so I'm
No
so
worries.
sorry for my slow response. But it looks like and the systems can be they're not just like Earth, but they could be randomly generated and whatnot. Right?
Oh yeah, you have full control, and because it's done through like the majority of colonies are sectors, you can have some really dynamic, very interesting systems where, like, say there's just a single super Earth in this solar system. You're all just fighting around one world, or you can do a Jupiter type situation where there's just dozens of moons all around one central body. If you don't want to do like an entire solar system.
Which is
So,
that just adds so much variety, you know?
yeah, I feel like it does.
And are there going to be like natural events too? Like there's a incoming asteroid, you have to stop it from hitting your colony, that sort of thing. Like environmental effects, basically.
I mean, there'll be game events like that. It won't be like physically simulated, like an actual comet is streaking through the system and you have to do something about it. But there will be natural disasters and things like that.
Okay, that's great because I love that sort of flavor stuff. You know,
Yeah,
stuff that
exactly. That's what I'm really trying to go for, right? Is to build that personal sort of story that you build through these little micro events. And not just actual physical game events, but things that happen inadvertently, right? Like someone defecting or someone dying in battle, right? That's a little micro narrative event for your empire.
Right. Exactly. And that sounds great because again, so many of these 4X games just feel so impersonal.
Exactly. And the bigger in scope, the more impersonal they feel, right?
Right.
By the time you're on Jungle World 600 and you're building farm number 10,000, you just don't care, right? Like this world means nothing to you. This world is just +2 for food a turn, and that's all it means to you. So I'd rather you have 5 colonies that mean something to you than 5,000 colonies that mean nothing to you. So that's the whole goal of the smaller scope and like the planetary system versus the galaxy at large.
Yeah, and I really like that kind of hyper focus, but still big enough to give you plenty of room to play around with. Because the solar system, if you think about it, our solar system is goddamn huge. Like,
Right.
It's massive thing, and it would take like days to get from like untraditional rockets and whatnot. It would take days to get from one place to another.
Right.
So I really like that kind of change in scale, and I'm really excited about it actually, because there was another game that tried to do just a single solar system. I can't remember the name of it now. It also had a Kickstarter that failed sadly, but then they just
you're talking about Starfighter Inc.
No. Oh, that's right. That's also in a single solar system, isn't it?
Yeah, and their first Kickstarter failed too, right?
I was thinking of a different game. I was thinking of another kind of 4X strategy game that was it was slow something. I can't remember the name of it now. But it was a strategy game, but it was like just our solar system and just planets, and that's it. And it was much more focused, and
the Expanse, the game.
Which I'm shocked hasn't been done yet. Honestly, why can't I fly my own? How do you say it? Is it Rocinante? Is that how you say it? Yeah, I can never remember because I've seen it in print so much. I think it's like Rocinate, you know. I forget it's a different pronunciation. But yeah, I mean, the solar system is massive in size and scope, and you abstract that, and it just loses its individuality.
Right. And as soon as you're colonizing entire planets in one go, right? That just immediately removes that personality from that planet. And so that's the goal of sectors, is to make Earth feel like Earth, not like, terrestrial world 7.
Which I mean, I gotta say, I really like the idea of that, especially if you can have like these different factions / nation states on different planets, like doing different things.
Or the same planet vying for, the
exactly.
sector in between the two, sort of thing.
Oh man, like that could happen, right? Like you have two different factions on a planet vying for like this one really great agricultural sector, for example.
Exactly.
Oh, and so they can have a little battle about. I'm sure there probably is. I'm guessing there is like ground combat, but it's abstracted. So like they're fighting on the planet. Is that what's going to happen, or is it all like orbital bombardment?
It's all like orbital bombardment.
That's fair. Keep it simple.
It's just there's a lot going on already in the combat. I don't want to add another dimension to it.
That's fair. I mean, especially if this is real time, you got to juggle all these spinning plates at once.
Right, and then you add ground combat. They couldn't see anyways, so that would just be weird. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of like numbers versus numbers. Right, that's just makes no sense to me. Watching, your spreadsheet change. That's not interesting, right? Versus. So that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. It's like by having, the Enterprise out there fighting versus ship number 72.
Right. And so you can, and do you can you name your ships, and can you assign them?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you assign them captains and whatnot?
Yep, and you can change like the markings and insignias on them, and the fleet colors, things like that. But you can't like change the loadout. There's no like ship designer or anything like that, because of the tactical abilities. I want to keep the ships very much like a traditional RTS, where one ship counters another ship, or this ship has special abilities. You can't modify it so it has all the best special abilities or something like that.
Oh, we have a question from the chat from Last Shogun. Can you have ships with dedicated space-to-ground weaponry or small craft, like fighters and whatnot?
There's no small craft, there's no fighters or anything like that. You can absolutely have like a special bombardment-based ship that will be one of the available hulls for ground-based conquest. There's no fighters or bombers. There probably will be drones in that sense, because all the ships basically are like big capital ships because of like the naming and stuff like that.
Right.
I didn't want to have like hundreds of little frigates and cruisers or things like that. So like everything's a big ship in that regard, that means something and takes a lot of your resources, like time and energy to build and maintain and keep going.
Now, some people are going to want to know this. I just realized I hadn't asked about it. Can you design ships, or are they pre-built designs in the game?
Right, like I just actually answered that, but I'll repeat
it.
Oh,
did you? I'm sorry.
It's okay. So it's like a traditional RTS where things just are, and that's what you build. You can customize like the name and the fleet colors and stuff like that, but specific ships' hulls have specific special abilities that you can use, and then they trigger like a long cooldown. So let's say a giant missile barrage launches, like overloads your missile system, and you launch 50 missiles instead of 5 at a time. But then you can't fire any more missiles for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever have you. So if you gave that ability to another ship, right, and then it had beam overload, that sort of thing. I don't want to have an imbalance where you find that perfect design that just trumps everything else. I think in traditional games where you have a ship designer, you generally find like 1 or 2 meta designs that just trump everything else, and you just build towards that. And so I want like specific counters to specific ships. If you have a beam, a missile platform, then the ship that comes in with a bunch of anti-missile weapons beats it, right? So that's the goal with that. But like these cooldowns that trigger almost create like like a supply chain sort of thing. Basically, if you've conquered a sector and your ships have used all their abilities and they're on cooldown for 5 to 10 real-time minutes, then when new ships come in with all of their abilities, you might just get blown away because you have none of your defensive abilities left. And so it's very important how you manage those tactical cooldowns. And it's basically the tactics part of the combat. And so if you could have a ship with like 5 offensive tactical cooldowns, it kind of ruins that balance of where you're vulnerable after a big engagement because you have 5, you only use 2, whereas traditionally you would only have 1 big offensive cooldown. So that's the reason to avoid the ship designer type scenario and have more traditional RTS style units.
Okay, that makes sense because it also keeps it simpler as well.
Well, yeah, it's simpler, but it's also more meaningful when you fire off that big ability.
Right.
And you have to think about what's going to happen in 10 minutes before it comes back up if I'm going to be counterattacked in that time and things like that. And I might lose control of the sector I just took because a fresh round of ships from my enemy came in, right? And they have all of their hull and all of their abilities ready to go. And that's another thing for having individual ships with big, meaty health bars is they take time to repair. So it's not just 1-2 volleys, the ship's gone, I have 200, I don't care. After a 5-minute fight, I might have barely scraped by with 20% of my hull. When a ship comes in with 100% of its hull, I'm doomed, right? Because that's going to be a 5-minute fight I can't last in anymore.
Right. So this kind of relates to what you were just talking about. The Last Shogun wants to know if there will be different like loadouts, focuses, missiles or drones, or any other ways to adapt a unit to a particular playstyle.
So it's all based on the hull design, like a traditional RTS, but they will have hyper specializations. Like you'll have like a missile platform and a beam weapon platform and a more kinetic turret type platform. And then you have support ships that have like special cooldowns to help those ships in combat or all ships in combat and stuff like that. So you want to bring a variety of ships because like I said, if you have just missile platforms or missile ships and they bring in the anti-missile counter, right, you're just dead.
You're screwed.
So you need variety in your fleets and formations.
Now, is there going to be any kind of concept for your fleets, any kind of concept of supply? Like if your fleets stray too far away from one of your colonies, will they start running out of ammo, that sort of thing?
The way I've abstracted that is that outside of friendly territory, things like repairs and your tactical cooldowns take longer to happen.
Nice.
To come back.
Because you don't have that kind of support. Right.
Exactly. But you're not like sitting there managing fuel or ammunition directly.
Okay, good.
Again, that goes back to the like high level emperor decision making where he would not care how you get the ammo, just get the ammo, right? So it's that sort of abstraction to make it more high level in your decision making. But again, these ships have big pools of health and those repairs take time. So if you're in enemy territory and you don't have fresh ships coming in to refresh what's the word, to like back up your previous thank you, there it is, reinforce your ships, then those ships are dead in the water, right, sitting at 20% health versus brand new ships, because in enemy territory those repairs might take 5-10 real-time minutes. So that's how I've sort of abstracted away the supply chain thing without making it super tedious. but also sort of having it, right?
Right. And so now we have another question. Moving on from that.
Sure, no problem.
Will the gameplay be based?
Thank you.
Will the gameplay be based on the whole system, or will they be, say, scenarios focused on a particular planet or two? So, like, I guess what he's asking is, like, will there just be a big open kind of sandboxy campaign, or will you have like more scripted things maybe once in a while, or will there be a mix?
So it's almost like Civilization. There will be the map you get is the map you play out on. You can customize that map, as we discussed a little bit earlier, where like you can have just like one super Earth with 20 sectors, or you can have Earth plus the moon, or Jupiter plus 10 moons and asteroids, or a whole planetary system. That's entirely up to you at the start of the game, how your system's generated and how big or small or the content that you want within it. And then I'd very much like to do focus scenarios like Civ has, where it's like you take over this faction at a certain point in time, and here's what's happening. Beat it, right? Like I definitely want to have those.
That's a good model, yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, it's just that one map, play it. There's not like a huge overarching campaign or anything like that.
That sounds like the that sounds like a good way to do it. We have another question. What's the pace of the game and how heavy is it on micromanagement? We did talk about this a little bit in the beginning, but
that's fine. I'm happy to answer it again.
Right.
So the pace is, I mean, it's not super APM intensive, actions per minute, like a StarCraft game or anything like that. You're making, out of combat, you're making fairly slow-paced decisions depending on how big your colony, your empire is, and how many colonies you have running. Programs on colonies take like 5 to 10 real-time minutes to finish. So if your colony has 4 to 6 slots, you're making a decision every 3 to 4 minutes on just that colony program setup, and then you have game events and other agent related tasks going on. So it's fairly slow paced as far as that is concerned. It's not, even though you might have 5 colonies going, you're still only making a decision every 30 seconds. You're not going to be taxed in that regard. When it starts to get a bit taxing is during combat, when you have multiple ships fighting, when to use the cooldowns. And if you're fighting on multiple fronts at the same time, that's a lot of decisions to make and a lot of places to go. So if you're a very slow-paced, low APM player, you'll want to play more strategically in when and where you engage, or how many ships you bring, and just always try to pick like an overwhelming fight where minute to second decision making isn't that important. But it's definitely not trying to be a 200 APM click fest like a high level StarCraft game or anything like that. You will definitely be comfortable just playing with just a mouse and just making small decisions as they come up. But as we discussed, I really like your option of being able to pause the game as a choice at the start.
Yeah, because I think I would try, if you gave me that option, I would try both and see which one I like better. I'd probably play a couple of games of each and see which one I liked better. And this is primarily going to be single player, so it's not that, right? There's no multiplayer at all, I'm guessing?
There's no multiplayer right now. There's a lot of physics that gets simulated, and so it's not an easy problem for me to solve as a solo developer.
Sure.
Even like big AAA games have problems solving all this ongoing physics second to second.
No, I'm totally fine with it being solely single player. 4X games don't always work well in multiplayer,
Right.
And
it is very role-playing centric and self-narrative centric. So that's where my focus is making that emotional connection during the game. But I'd like to get multiplayer, obviously, but it's not on the table as of for the September release, not at all.
Right. So how much work are you putting into the AI? Shogun just brought up the AI, so there's got to be a lot of work being put into that.
I see the AI very differently generally to other games, I would say. I'm not trying to make the AI play the game in the traditional sense of having all of the same player options and doing what the player does. What I'm really trying to do is get the AI interacting with the player often and creating little mini narratives like we've talked about earlier with like the Borg hunting down Jean-Luc Picard and stuff like that. So it's not trying to play the game and just do its own thing and never talk to you. Like sometimes you play a game of Civ and by the end you finally meet that one faction that's just been doing whatever. So I'm trying to avoid that scenario as much as possible. So the AI cheats ruthlessly, but it's for the purpose of making the experience better for the player, rather than just having dumb AI that's trying to play the game and you never feel engaged, or they make really dumb decisions. Like it's the worst when an AI has been like your buddy for 4,000 years in Civ, and then just the numbers flip and they're betray you out of nowhere after thousands of years of prosperity.
Oh God,
so I'm trying
that.
Yeah, it's arbitrary, right? I hate those like numeric arbitrary decision making. And so the AI has like personalities behind it, where like this AI will try to buddy up with you, and this guy will try to bully you, and this guy will specifically betray you after trying to buddy you. And so I'm trying to create more of those personalities where there's intersections of interaction between them, rather than just vanilla trying to play the game like a player would, because that just doesn't work. Like if AAA studios can't solve that problem, as a single developer, I'm not going to try to solve that problem. So I'm approaching it differently to avoid that problem entirely. And I hope that the experience feels like they're playing the game, but aren't necessarily, crunching the numbers like you are as a human.
I like that. I like that a lot, because so many games have AI that is just like, I won't say the name of the game, but it's like, it friended me and declared war on me back and forth every turn for 10 turns.
Right, because the numbers just like whatever in its head are shifting over and over. And it's the worst. And it pulls you out of the game. You realize you are playing a game and that this AI is just stupid. You just get frustrated and it's no fun. And I think that engaging with the player is much more interesting than beating the AI necessarily. It's fun to lose to the AI. It's fun to beat the AI, but sometimes it's not rewarding to beat or lose to the AI, because you just feel cheated in that regard, that the numbers went this way instead of that way, so this guy betrayed you.
Right. And so many games just get that wrong. It's
really and they're like giving you technology that helps you win the game because you've offered them enough gold for it and stuff like that. There's so many ways to game bad AI that it just at the high difficulty levels, that's the only way to win, because it just so cheats so ruthlessly that you're not even really like playing and having fun in this experience anymore. You're literally gaming the system for the purpose of beating the game. And that's exactly what I want to avoid with Remnant.
No, it's totally fair. Well, we should start wrapping up, because I'm losing consciousness. So
No problem. We've been here quite a while.
Yeah. So, folks, the game is Remnant. It is currently in Kickstarter. It's in Kickstarter for 12 more days as we record this?
It ends on the 24th. Yeah.
So 12 more days as we record this on the 12th of June. And it's really looking fascinating. Again, it's looking to be different than just about any 4X that's come before it. And if the idea of a Star Wars Rebellion inspired 4X gets you excited, then you need to back this. Because I'm excited, and I can't wait to see what the early access version will bring. hopefully, like you said, around September.
That's the goal, yeah.
So I want to thank you for joining us. Folks, just a couple of quick programming notes before we wrap up. We are not doing a stream this Thursday because a few of our people are going to be going to MST3K Live. Or is it Rift Tracks Live?
I think it's Rift Tracks Live. We're doing Space Mutiny.
Oh, God. I wish I could be going to that, but yeah. That sounds like it's going to be great, though, especially if they come up with new names like Blast Hard Cheese, or I can't even remember
Big
all
McLarge Huge.
Yes.
Roll Fizzle Beef.
With Santa Claus as your admiral. Oh, God, that movie.
Ho, 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 ho.
With all the Battlestar Galactica stock footage you could handle.
Dude, that was the craziest thing that I think just goes completely unmentioned of just all of this, like, stock Battlestar Galactica footage is just all over the place. Meanwhile, the inside of it is somehow
it's a brewery or a refinery or something. I mean, Star Trek kind of did that when they made a brewery their engine room. It's like, what?
I don't even want to talk about that.
I was very confused.
So dumb.
It was so weird. It's probably my least favorite thing about that movie.
Where are they? Where is this in the ship? Where is this in relationship to the bridge? I'm so confused.
Is the Enterprise a TARDIS? It looks so much bigger on the inside than it does on the outside. So yeah, we're not going to have a stream this Thursday, and next Tuesday our podcast is going to be a morning show because our guest is in England. We're going to be talking about the currently in alpha MMO Starfighter Infinity, which I am super excited about because that game is really shaping up to be something amazing. So I can't wait to talk to the developer about that. So I want to thank everyone. We had a lot of listeners tonight. Thank you, everyone, for listening and for your questions. Thank you. Sorry,
I was going to say thanks, Scott, really, because I'm really excited to see where this goes. See the finished product.
Thank you. It's only a few more months. I'll be showing off more too in the next coming months. Now that we've hit that Kickstarter goal for audio equipment, so I'll be able to record some developer videos with nice, crisp, clear video.
Oh, nice.
Well, keep us in the loop because we want to know.
I will. Thank you so much.
And as always, thank you to
everyone that watched.
Yes, and I'll always thank you to our Patreon subscribers for keeping the lights on around here. We couldn't do this without you. So thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.